so great to see some familiar names and faces and some new names and faces. We're so excited that y'all are joining us. I appreciate you taking the time. Please feel free to eat your lunch. Stacey and Dr. Glover and Claire saw me scarfing mine down before everybody got into the room. So please make yourselves comfortable.
Oh, I'm loving seeing a lot of these friends joining us and new names too. Thank y'all. We will give one more minute and then we're going to kick it off, as I'm still admitting. If you're just now joining us, we're signing in the chat. If you're with an organization, say what your organization is. If you're here as an individual, we are thrilled to see you. I'm going to kick us off and get us started. Welcome again if you're just joining us. We are thrilled to have you with us for this Menstrual Advocacy 101 Lunch and Learn session. If you don't know who I am Claire Cox. I am the chair of the Georgia STOMP Coalition. Just briefly, so you'll know who we are, Georgia STOMP is a coalition of 31 organizations throughout the state. We have a reach right now of around 60,000 through that network. We first came together late in 2017 and early in 2018 as a grassroots gathering of leaders in the state who were interested in the issues of menstrual equity and period poverty. This year, we seeded our inaugural board and received our 501c3 status and have moved into another arena of organization. We continue to be nonpartisan, working on the issues of elimination of period poverty in the state of Georgia through policy changes and funding. And we've been successful, and you'll hear a little bit more about this later in the webinar, but we've been successful in obtaining funding for the Department of Education and Department of Public Health, and in influencing the Department of Corrections and GEMA Homeland Security policy changes around provision of products in our state. So at this point, I want to go ahead and get to our speakers and turn it over to my vice chair, Adele Stewart, to do their introductions.
Thanks so much, Claire, and thank you all for attending today. It's really my distinct pleasure to introduce our two speakers that we have. I'm grateful to call them friends, as well as members of organizations that are members of the Georgia STOMP Coalition. So first, I'd like to introduce Stacey Chavis. Stacey is the Managing Director of Campaigns Academy. She trains leaders to serve in elected office and serve in leadership positions for political candidates and campaigns. She also works with nonprofits to develop their public policy and advocacy agendas. Her work includes public policy, government affairs, and nonprofit training. Stacey built her expertise in politics, public service, public policy through the years serving in foundations, government agencies, and campaigns. She also has worked for all three branches of the federal government. Stacey is very active in the community, and I can attest to that personally. She serves on several boards and committees. She's also a graduate of Oglethorpe University and the University of Georgia School of Law. She also attended the Women's Campaign School at Yale University. Stacey, thanks so much for being here with us today. Next, we have Dr. Elesia Glover. She is the founder and president of Posh Pack Incorporated. Posh Pack is a nonprofit organization that empowers students through access to feminine hygiene essentials. Her organization provides pads to elementary, middle, and high schools throughout Georgia, working closely with school nurses, social workers, and administrators. Posh Pack raises awareness about period poverty and access in schools among local and state elected officials. Dr. Glover believes advocacy, along with political awareness, creates sustainable progress towards a more equitable society. When not doing the work of Posh Pack, Dr. Glover manages North and South America external relations for an international nonprofit. She formerly was a public policy manager for the city of Atlanta, and she obtained her doctorate in public policy and is also a graduate of the Women's Campaign School at Yale Law School. Thank you both, Dr. Glover and Stacey, for your time today. We are so incredibly grateful to know you and have you share your wealth of knowledge with us. So with that, I will pass it over to Stacey for an introduction to advocacy in Georgia. Take it away.
Thank you, Adele. I very much appreciate that. And thank you to you and Claire for the invitation to be with you all today. And glad to see lots of familiar faces and lots of organizations. I know that we all have firsthand knowledge of this issue and all of the things that we need to do to progress. So I am here today to talk about advocacy, one of my favorite topics, and how we talk to our legislators about what's going on. Okay, so wait a minute, hold on. I'm trying to share my screen. You know, it never wants to work when you need it to work. Okay, can you all see? Okay, perfect, yay. Excuse me. So I am tasked today with talking to you about advocacy. And one of the things that I want you to leave this particular training, and I have 15 minutes and we are going to do our part and slide on over to the lab so you can hear from Dr. Glover. But I really want you to know that our legislators need us to educate them on why these issues are important to us and what we need them to do. People have a tendency to think that our legislators are the most brilliant people and they know everything. Some of them are brilliant, many of them are, but we want to make sure that we educate them on the issues that are important to us and we tell them why they are important. So advocacy and you, legislative policy. And the other thing I want you to leave with this training with is knowing that your voice matters. Oftentimes when we talk about advocacy and legislation and policy, you know, people think, well, I am just one. Well, your one voice is really important because I think about all of the 40 something people that are on this Zoom today. 40 people are very powerful together. 40 people are also very powerful individually. So I want you to know that your voice is important in talking with our elected officials, because I always have to remind every group that I speak to is that our elected officials work for us. We send them to the Capitol, we send them to the City Council, to the County Commission to work on behalf of the citizens. So never forget the fact that they work for us. Okay. All right, so advocacy, it is public support or recommendation for a cause or an issue. Also, it is about public awareness. I think a lot about the work that Georgia STOMP does is in public awareness, along with the policy and the legislative pieces, which are also really, really important. So just wanted to ground us in a really basic definition of what is advocacy and what do we call it. Again, why do we need you to get involved and stay involved? Because we need to tell our elected officials what we want them to do, especially at the Georgia General Assembly. You know, and you want to make sure that you know, your organization, your group is staying abreast of what's going on under the Gold Dome. They just got started on Monday, and then we had a little bit of a game. Every day this week, I will be wearing Georgia colors. As you heard, I am a Georgia graduate, go Dogs. But they need to know how we feel about issues. And I tell people all the time that certain organizations and groups, their agenda is always pushed at the forefront because they are always talking to our elected officials and saying, this is what we want, this is what we need. So we have to be just as diligent with all of our issues, particularly as it relates to period poverty and you know, really getting them to understand why it's important to have pads and things in schools and all of the work that STOMP does. So again, they don't know every issue. You got to tell them why it's important and break it down in dollars and cents. And so we talk about getting to know our legislators. Show of hands, because you can raise your hand on this call. How many people know the name of your member of the House and the Senate? I know everybody may not necessarily live in Georgia, but show of hands. Okay, I'm seeing lots of hands. Yay. And you could use your raised hand button for those of you that are not on camera. We know this is a lunch and learn, so you are eating and working and learning. So thank you for that participation, but a lot of you raised your hand, so thank you. But they need to know that you know them, right? And excuse me, one of the other things that we talk about in the advocacy training, specifically when you are speaking to your elected official, one of the things that I always tell people to lead with is, I live in your district. Those are like magic words, because you are what? A voter. You are what? A constituent. And so attending their events, their town halls, which now, we are still living in COVID times. A lot of these meetings are all online, and you can access them online. And just like you are, doing this lunch and learn, you could watch your city council meeting online. Of course, follow them on social media, particularly with our legislators. Many of them are very active, particularly on Twitter and Facebook, giving updates and things that are coming down the pipeline, knowing what their issues are, and just knowing how they vote, having those communications, calling their offices. All of these things you can do as an individual. This is, and these are activities and things that we call it under advocacy. And I realize that everybody doesn't go down to the Capitol and isn't drinking all the super Kool-Aid like some of us are, but I do want you to know that there are steps that you can take to advocate your legislators. Also, again, following in the news and everything that's going on. So we got a lot going on here, specifically in Georgia. Again, knowing your legislators, your city council members, your members of the county commission before you ask them for something, right? So it's always good to, especially on behalf of your organizations, to be building those relationships now so that they know you, they're familiar to you, be a reliable source of information. Some of our legislators may not know the issues of Georgia STOMP and why it is incredibly important. And so we have to educate them and tell them. And here's the other part. Once you educate them on your issue, should a vote come before the committee, a vote come before the House or the Senate, that is the time to then say, hey, our organization, we would like for you to vote yes for this, or we would like for you to vote no. I see so many organizations that do an incredible job of awareness, and they do great campaigns about awareness, and this bill is coming down the pipeline, and then they kind of stop at that point. The next step is, we want you to make sure that you vote in favor, or we want you to make sure that you do not vote in favor. And here is why. Again, I tell people, you talk to your legislators as you would talk to the children in your life. You tell them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and why. This is what we need you to do. Timing is everything. Again, knowing the process. That's why I'm really glad this training is happening during the first part of our legislative session. Again, they just gavelled in on Tuesday. So still, everything is getting up and running. You can go online and see the bills that are coming down the pipeline, stuff that's still going to be introduced. So again, we have to make our presence known. Timing is everything. And also, when you're talking to your legislators and when you call their offices, you will probably speak with an assistant or an aide, but ask them, how are they going to vote? How are they leaning on this particular issue? Again, all questions well within your right. When we talk about taking action on advocacy, especially as we're in this virtual world, you can still build relationships virtually. I think we have done a really good job of that for the last 2 years, and going to their meetings again and chiming in. And some of the meetings that are held virtually, they also allow you to make public comments and things virtually or via phone. So again, you want to continue to make sure somebody in your organization, because one person can't go to all the meetings on the local level, state and federal, but making sure that somebody's designated to follow those meetings. Also, who controls your issue, right? Is it a local, state, federal issue? For our purposes here at Georgia STOMP, a lot of the work right now is being done at a state level. So in the Georgia General Assembly, become an expert on the issue and then explain why it's important. Again, there's so many issues that are coming down the pipeline as far as our legislators are concerned, and they need to know why our issue is important and why they need to pay attention to it right now. Again, why they need to pay attention to it right now, why it's important to make sure there's budget money right now. Also, again, sending emails and letters and phone calls. So I always tell people in this part why that's important. So my very first job was working as a staff assistant for a member of Congress. And I call it the college educated receptionist job, but it's a great first job, opened my eyes to a lot of different things. And so when there would be big bills and things that the members of Congress are getting ready to vote on, our phones would be just ringing off the hook. And people would say, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. And it was my job to record all of that information in the district office in Decatur, and then to share that with our office in DC. So when people say, does somebody really pay attention to those phone calls? That was my job, to record all of those phone calls and to let the Congresswoman know that these are the people who wanted to make sure, you know, that you voted in favor. So your phone calls, your letters, they do make a difference. Also, Kathy Ash, who was a former state rep for a very long time member of the Junior League of Atlanta, and I know there are many Junior League members on the call. She represented a district in Midtown where Colony Square is, for those of you all that are in the metro area, lots of people. And she would say if she got 3 to 4 phone calls on an issue, that's when she knew that it was important. And so we want to make sure that we call them, we email them, we tell them how we feel and what's important. Taking action, you know, getting the word out about your issue and cause to membership. You know, I heard about Georgia STOMP through Junior League and our state public affairs committee, and immediately was just drawn to the work. Number one, as somebody who has a period and has had one for 30 years and understands all of the process and all of the pieces that go into that, this issue is most definitely near and dear to my heart. Also, speaking at public meetings and hearings. A lot of the meetings have gone back in person. Some of them are still virtual, but you can have your time to speak in these committee meetings and hearings so that folks can say, hey, this is what we want done. We want this money in the budget. We want these things at the school district level. You also have to follow up with them. If we don't know anything about the legislative session, we know that it moves at warp speed. Here in Georgia, it's 40 days, but those 40 days are not consecutive. This is also a major election year. You have all of the statewide constitutional officers that are up for election, as well as every member of our Georgia General Assembly in the House and Senate. So it's a lot going on coming down the pipeline, all in the mix, all at the same time. So following up with them, you know, building alliances with other organizations. I think Georgia STOMP has done an incredible job of doing that with organizations all across the state. You know, again, you could have power in one group, but you can have power in 45 groups. Hosting events and starting public awareness campaigns. I have been a fan of a lot of different organizations in their awareness campaigns, things that they do on social media, again, how they are talking about what's coming down the pipeline. Okay. Setting up your meeting, making your request, all these things you all already know, but just wanted to make sure that I highlighted the sending them information about why it's important, right? So following up with those policy statements, those pieces as to why it's important, and have contact information. And again, make those recommendations. Yes, we want you to vote. No, we don't want you to vote. We want to make sure there's more money in the budget. You have to be very specific with your request. Again, this is if you're going to do a meeting in person, you want to make sure you have your information. And if you do your meeting virtually, you still want to make sure that you send them some information electronically, or if it's a Zoom type of meeting. Specifically, I have had meetings before the holidays with some of the staff, with some of our legislators via Zoom, because there's some information that I needed to get to them. So again, that's an option, that's a tool in your toolbox for continuing along in this thing that we call advocacy. One of the things that I always tell people is be respectful, be kind. Again, remember that they serve us. They work on behalf of the people. Sometimes I think they forget that. And so we have to gently remind them that they work on behalf of the people, and this is how the people feel, and this is what the people would like for you to do. But we do that with a smile, because we're Southern women and we already know how to do that. Again, thanking them for their time, following up again, follow up, follow up, follow up. I don't know about you all, but last week was my follow-up week on everything before the holidays. This week, we continue to follow up. So again, if you want to make sure, you got to make sure you follow up. Again, think about all of the national, state, and local organizations that their agendas, their issues always get pushed to the forefront because they stay in their face, they stay on their phones, they tell them this is what we want, this is what we want done. Also, again, don't be respectful if you disagree. You just may agree to disagree on this issue. Don't be intimidating. I know there's a lot of people who sometimes feel like if we do that, they will be more sympathetic to our cause. Not necessarily. Always remember to make sure that you thank the staff. As somebody who's been staff for many years, we appreciate that. And sometimes we push your stuff up to the front. I'm just saying, you didn't hear that from me. And also make sure that you give them personal stories. Overcoming advocacy barriers, because I've got about 3 more minutes left. You really want to make sure, again, that you continue to spread the word about why your issue is important and why it is important to act now, why we need this money in the budget, why we need you to pass this bill, why. And you have to give the information. Oftentimes with our men legislators, we break things down into dollars and cents so that they can understand. This is why it's important. Because again, you have so many other issues that are coming down the pipeline this legislative session, and you want to make sure that they know yours. Again, if you will be going there in person or if you will be doing some things virtually, understanding the committee meetings, the subcommittee meetings, subcommittee hearings, all those different things. And those are times when you can send advocacy alerts out to your membership to say, hey, everybody across the state, contact your person to say, hey, we want to make sure that this bill moves out of committee, or we want to make sure that this bill does not move out of committee. They are taking written testimony and things of that nature. So again, there are ways that you can stay engaged and involved from your desk wherever you are across the state. Also, building goodwill, I think, is incredibly important. I want to leave you with this because I do know that we want to get to Dr. Glover's presentation and take your questions. But advocacy is educating yourself on the issues, educating others. I'd be remiss if I didn't say voting in every election. In Georgia, we have our primary coming up in May, but also please make sure that you stay abreast in your city and your county for special elections. If you look above me, you see Lift Every Voice and Vote, and that is the catalyst and the premise for why I do this work and why I stay engaged. Continue to meet and stay in communication with your elected officials. They need to know who you are. They need to know which organization you're with. They need to know your issue. Again, attending their meetings. A lot of them are virtual. I attend my city council meetings from the confines of my desk at home. Now, mind you, I could walk to my city hall, but it's cold and it's COVID. So I still stay engaged and involved by watching it online. And they know me because I will put a little note in the chat. Sending tweets on the issues are really important. Posting messages using social media. Again, I encourage you to use your voice for whatever your issue is, but particularly for the issues right now in the menstrual advocacy for Georgia STOMP. We need them to understand why this is incredibly important, why it's incredible for the children, the young adults, and women. And again, it's using your voice for change. One thing, and then I'm going to pass it over. One of the things that I learned when Claire, Adele, and Dr. Glover and I spoke last week was that now I call them girls in elementary school are now starting cycles, and they don't have pads to fit their little tiny bodies. Again, always in the education space, right? So those are things that we need to know to talk about, that, that we continue along this process of why it's really important and why we need to make sure that there are supplies now in the elementary schools as well as the middle schools and high schools. So advocacy is power, and it's you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all today. Here is my information. It is Stacey with an E. Please don't forget the E, because if you do, it goes to another lady. That is my I'm on all the social medias, and my Gmail is first name, last name @gmail.com. It comes straight to my phone. But thank you all for the opportunity to be with you today. I'm not going to stop sharing my screen, and I know we will pass it along to Dr. Glover. And I believe we're taking questions at the end, Adele and Claire. Okay.
Correct. Yeah, thank you, Stacey. That was so great. Thank you so much. In the interest of time, I am going to go ahead and just pass it directly over to Dr. Glover, who's going to build on that Advocacy 101 with the power of personal stories when we're talking to legislators, and give some anecdotes of her own history of advocacy. So thank you so much, Dr. Glover. I'll let you take it away.
Sure. Welcome, everyone. And great to see so many awesome faces. Stacey gave some really good information, so I hope everyone kind of takes it and really puts it into action. And so I just want to build a bit on it and give some lessons learned from my perspective. And I've been fortunate enough to work on the congressional side, and picking up the phone and having those conversations, but also working on the side of Posh Pack, where I am actively advocating and making those calls. And so I've been able to see it from both sides, which has been really beneficial for me. But one thing I wanted to just briefly talk about, because I see this happening with a lot of nonprofits, is that we will often shy away from the political advocacy part of what we do, because we have that 501c3 where we can't lobby. And so I just want to say to that point, you don't have to be afraid to talk and have the conversations. We are fully within our own right to inform, to raise awareness, and to educate. And so if you are on the call today and you're 501c3 and you're thinking about, okay, I want to be able to I want to get more involved in this, but I also don't necessarily want to cross the line where I'm doing something that I shouldn't be, just remember, as long as you're informing and educating and you're raising that political awareness on your issue, you are fully in your right to do that. And I think it's important to do that, because I really believe the work that we do in our nonprofits, coupled with our political awareness, is how we really create that sustainable change. So please don't be afraid to pick up the phone, have those conversations as a nonprofit entity. But also, I think what's really important is, in my meetings, especially if you're in person, is to create some type of leave behind. And that leave behind document is, again, as Stacey talked about, which is like that fact sheet. And for me, just a tip on my end, I always like to put it in a folder, because I believe that folders are less likely to get mixed in that shuffle. So I always create a branded folder with that fact sheet inside. And even if I've given them my business card, I like to get the folders that have the business card insert inside. And so if they lose the one that I gave them, there's also one in the folder. A lot of times you will meet with legislative aides and things of that nature. And if you're trying to get your information funneled to the top, you're trying to get your information funneled to the member or funneled to the legislative director, that type of thing, that folder is a lot easier to get passed from person to person. But it is really critical that you do have that fact sheet, because in a day's time, they may meet on 10 different issues. Menstrual equity, period poverty is number one to us, but to a member sitting in an office, they may go from menstrual equity to cervical cancer, to breast cancer, to homelessness, to child abuse, all in a matter of a day. So you really want to be able to have information, or have your pertinent information that they can reference, and they can continue to look back at and review, and then follow up with you, in addition to you following up with them. So that leave behind is very important. Also, something that's critical is to never undervalue the staff that you're talking to. A lot of people say, oh, I just talked to the intern, my information is not going to go anywhere. That's not true. Whoever is picking up the phone is your most important person at that point, no matter who it is. Intern, legislative aide, office manager, 9 times out of 10, really 10 times out of 10, you're not going to get the member picking up the phone. So you're going to have to go through someone else. So don't undervalue the importance of the conversation and the clarity that you need to have when talking to the person you're on the phone with, because that is the person who's going to relay the message to hopefully get you in the door or to confirm some next steps for you. Another important thing is to do your research. There's so many different members, and you really want to understand what is important to them and apply it to what's important to you. So understand, what district are they in? Do you do relevant work in their district? Can you essentially spotlight that work that you do. For example, I've had multiple conversations with Representative Eric Allen. He's in the Smyrna area. That's where a lot of our Posh Pack work is. And my conversations with him, we do work in Savannah, but I'm not going to necessarily highlight our pad donations in Savannah when I know his district sits in Smyrna. I'm going to talk about the Smyrna schools. I'm going to talk about the Smyrna work, the Smyrna nurses, and that type of thing. So do your research and understanding where they're located and how it applies directly to what you're doing. It will be much more impactful and memorable for them because, again, their biggest focus is who's voting for me. I want to know about the impact that I can have amongst my voters. So if you're able to drive that home within your organization or as an individual in stating that you are one of their voters, it'll be much more impactful for them. And you can do that simply. The Georgia General Assembly website lists the members, lists the district, and lists their staff member. So a part of doing that research is, also, knowing names before you make a phone call, calling to the office and saying, can I speak to Representative Allen? Oh, he's not here today. Okay, well, is his staff lead, Bert in the office? Like knowing who that person is because it's listed on the website. That's a simple Google search, so to speak. And then, going from there, just being able to have that level of detail is really helpful when you make that phone call because it just makes you look that much more prepared. And then always applying what you're talking about back to the constituency. How does this affect their district? What personal stories can you give them that is personal to them? And so one example I always like to give is for Posh Pack last Christmas. We worked with a social worker in Smyrna, and she told us about a family that we donated pads to, and there were 3 teenage girls in one household, and they were rotating who could go to school at a time because their cycles are all at the same time. And so you had 2 girls staying home and 1 going to school because the mom just couldn't afford to provide pads for all 3. That type of story kind of really drives home the impact of what's really happening in the schools within their district. People hear the stats, they understand it's important, but when you physically give them a story that says girls are really missing school, they're really not going, or they're leaving home early, or teachers are using their own funds to buy pads. Nurses are doing the same. We're seeing this across the schools. We're seeing this across the nursing staff as well. Having those personal touch point stories really helps them to remember the issue as they have all of these meetings throughout the day. So however you can make it personal to them, by showing the impact of what you learned on your end is a part of that advocacy. That's a part of that education and informing that you can do. And what I find is most of the time they say, wow, I had no idea. That is the most common response I get. I had no idea that this was happening. I thought, girls that didn't have access to pads was a developing country issue. I thought this was an issue in India. I thought this was an issue everywhere else. I didn't realize it was the issue in the US. Not only is it an issue in the US, it's an issue in your district. So you want to be able to drive that home. And then you also want to have a call to action. And, your call to action can also be more informative than actually, policy related per se. It can be, the call to action is, can we have a follow-up meeting where I can help educate you more on this issue, or where you can, maybe educate your other colleagues on this issue more? How can I be a support in educating you as maybe a technical expert in terms of policy and what we're seeing? Or, Georgia STOMP has these amazing surveys that they do with the nurses. That information from those surveys, I'm sure, helps educate and inform the impact of why the policy is so important. So remember that the knowledge that you have from what you do is certainly impactful, and that from a nonprofit perspective can help inform the policy in a way that you have the right to do. So those are just some of the things that I've certainly learned on my end. I hope that's helpful. Just to go over and reiterate it a bit again, that leave behind is important, that document not undervaluing the people you're speaking to on the phone, because whoever's picking up is really important and valuable. That personal story of impact. And the biggest one out of all of it is to do your research. The more you can make it personal to them and their district and their constituency, is the better opportunity that you will have, that they will remember it, they will follow up, and then you can make progress from there.
Dr. Glover, that was so fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your words of wisdom. I've taken so many notes of things that I want to remember, especially on, personal anecdotes or using data and your organization's work from an elected official's district. I also love Googling the staff member's name before you even make the phone call. Like, what an simple and easy, but really impactful way to get your information where you want it to go. So thank you so much. We would love to now share with y'all the 2022 Georgia STOMP priorities. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. If I can get a thumbs up from folks when they can see, awesome. Okay, I've got a thumbs up. And if you'll, just one moment, let me clear my throat and I'll be ready to. And by clear my throat, I mean, there's some noise in my house that I needed to silence before we move forward. So, well, thank you all so much. There are, we're excited to say there are multiple bills already filed relating to menstrual equity and period poverty in Georgia already. So this is fantastic news, and there's so much work to be done. So having clear priorities is really important for our own advocacy work, as well as this fantastic work that our elected officials are doing on our behalf. So without further ado, I'll jump into our 2022 legislative priorities. The first, which should come to no surprise to those of you who've been with us since the beginning, is our first priority to eliminate the 4% state sales tax on menstrual products. This sales tax is unconstitutional based on the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, and it should be eliminated. There's already a bill filed, that is Bill HB 810, and we'll have more information about these priorities coming out via our newsletter, as well as available on our website. The next priority is to increase the funding for the Department of Education to include 5th grade students. We heard a little bit about this from Stacey and her recalling our conversation with Dr. Glover earlier this week, but it's clear that now more than ever, students need to have what they need to be focused on their education, and that includes any student who is menstruating. So providing menstrual products in schools is truly essential to ensuring the student's education isn't negatively impacted because of a lack of supplies. The current funding that was allocated initially in 2019 only covers students grades 6 to 12, but school nurses and others like Dr. Glover who are providing products in schools often report needing to supply products for younger students. A Georgia STOMP survey of our school nurses documents that when these products aren't supplied by school systems, nurses and other school staff bear those costs personally. So we want to make sure that the state is allocating enough money to cover at the minimum those 5th grade students. Finally, our third top priority this year is to return the funding for the Department of Public Health to pre-pandemic levels, which was $500,000. We all know that family finances have been devastated by the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, and that services and products that community health departments provide are absolute lifelines to Georgians in need. If we restore this funding for the Department of Public Health to stock menstrual products on their shelves, that means that Georgians who menstruate are healthy and can focus on getting back to work or focusing in school. So I will stop my share now, and I'm going to hand it over to the chair of Georgia STOMP and my dear friend, Claire Cox, to talk about how we got here.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to give kind of some brief background on kind of what we've learned in the last few years of Georgia STOMP. And then we're going to return to Dr. Glover and Stacey Chavis and talk some more about how to actually advocate on some of these issues. But a couple of things, you just heard our priorities. And one of the key things that we kind of want folks to understand is we advocate on multiple issues. We're trying to eliminate the sales tax, but we're also trying to provide or make sure that products are provided in the places they need it in the state. And those aren't the same issue. To some extent, you've got to learn to help legislators understand that there's the issue of period poverty and there are the issues of access in our state. And that's somewhat different from the conversation around the equity issue of the tax, because they'll try to equate the two and then shut you off and let you know, well, we've already done this. So you'll kind of understand the difference in how we look at it. Leadership has been very responsive to understanding the existence of period poverty in the state and its effect on students, and its effect on learning and effect on a person's dignity, and somewhat the ties of that to the economy. You've heard that they have already, beginning in 2019 fiscal year budget, allocated funds for schools. There have been funds for the local health department. And there have been policy changes in our state related to provision of products in state prisons and provision of products following natural disasters by GEMA and Homeland Security. GEMA is Georgia Emergency Management Association agency. Excuse me, I always mess that up, Adele. But so we've had a lot of successes in the arena of having legislators begin to understand the issue of period poverty. And that's a big success. And Georgia's actually somewhat unique in the country in that in other states, you'll hear about them mandating products for schools or mandating products in different places. Georgia's actually put money to that. And we are very appreciative of the leadership in our state legislature acknowledging that. But the equity issue of the tax has been a different discussion, and we've not been able to get them to be convinced of the need for that and the inequity issues of the tax. Opposition, so you'll know what you're speaking to people against. Opposition believes that they sort of make a financial argument against it, saying it's not a lot of savings to particular individuals, even though we know that some families that have trouble with this may have multiple females in the home or may have less access to being able to buy products in bulk and cheaper amounts, so that the amount that they calculate for savings on sales tax is underestimated. But they also are just generally against eliminating sales tax on products because of the belief or the truth that we're moving more towards a service economy. And so we have a shrinking tax base because of less things being taxed. We also have a new hurdle this year, and I don't know how much of a hurdle it's going to be, but there's going to be a lot of conversation around a bill that's been filed to completely eliminate income tax. That may not happen in our state, but it's going to take up a lot of conversation time in the committees that make a difference to whether the income tax, the sales tax bill moves. I hope I've been clear on that. There's a couple of other just little points I want to make, and then I want to throw it back to Adele. But language matters. The language that you're talking with your legislator about matters. You can't just Google and come up with that this is a luxury tax and we need to eliminate luxury tax. In Georgia, we don't use the language of luxury tax. Things are either exempt or non-exempt. So if you call a legislature and start talking about a luxury tax, they're going to know right away that you haven't done your legwork. You haven't done your research, as I think Dr. Glover and Stacey both pointed out. So know that. Also know there's a difference between the term pink tax and the elimination of the tampon tax. A pink tax is a form of tax. It isn't really a form of tax. The pink tax is an extra amount added to products because they're sold to women, and the tampon tax may be a form of a pink tax, but it's not the same thing. So understanding that a little bit. Finally, I do want to point out, and I think I've talked about it a little bit, this is a bipartisan effort across the nation. It's been a bipartisan effort when the tax has been eliminated. But in Georgia, that's been a difficult balance to reach. partly because this issue of understanding the need, the reality of period poverty and putting funding to it, but pushing back on the idea of eliminating sales tax. So I hope that was pretty quick, but I hope you should kind of give you a picture of what we've learned and what we've experienced and where we're coming to this now 4th year of working on this in the state legislature. HB 810 is the tax elimination bill, and this is the 3rd tax elimination bill that we've introduced in Georgia. And so far, we've not been able to get it through committee. We've been assigned to the Ways and Means Committee, and then put in the sales tax subcommittee, and that's where we sit right now with our bill. Georgia STOMP has met with the leadership of that committee and are pushing and asking for a hearing this year. We've had 1 hearing in past years, but you got to have 2 hearings and a vote. And so that's what we're asking for, is 2 hearings and a vote. With that, I'm going to throw it back to Adele and let you maybe say a little bit more about our specific priorities this year.
Thank you so much, Claire. I find that those nuances make such a difference when we're advocating. And so I appreciate you going over those. We're going to round out with just some quick information about how you can use how you can share our priorities widely, how you can be informed, and then we'll do a quick role-playing exercise that we're very excited about. We're going to try something new. But before we jump into that, if you look in the chat, Claire has shared our 2022 guide to the issues, and this is a PDF document that includes the graphics that we went over earlier, as well as some of the nitty-gritty about legislating or about the issues and our priorities for 2022. But it has those really nice, succinct, what we call hot takes about the issues that will make it very easy for you to do what Dr. Glover and Stacey recommended, making sure that you have clear information about why these issues are important and delivering that information succinctly. So please help yourself to the Guide to the Issues document, as well as check out Georgia Stomp's social media channels, our website, which is at georgiastomp.org, and join us for some of our upcoming events. One that I'd like to highlight is Georgia Stomp Ignites the Capitol, which will be virtual on February 8th from 8:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. We will have legislators joining us to talk about the importance of menstrual equity and addressing period poverty, as well as hands-on opportunities for advocacy, even though we will all be virtual. We've heard from both Stacey and Dr. Glover about how that's possible. And then finally, Claire pulls together Tax-Free Tuesday, which is a newsletter that goes out every Tuesday with the latest news from Georgia Stomp. You can stay up to date on where we are in committee with certain bills or what the urgent calls are that need to be made. So sign up for Tax-Free Tuesday by visiting our website at georgiastomp.org and popping onto the listserv. So with that, I am going to hand it over to Stacey and Dr. Glover to assist us with a quick role play of what it would be like if you were to pick up the phone and call one of your elected officials in the Georgia General Assembly right now. Stacey, do you want to make that call for us?
Oh, okay. I'm making the call. Okay.
I think Dr. Glover will be, what did we call it? A college educated, she will be a master's educated receptionist for us now.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Or
okay.
doctorate, excuse me.
Ring, 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 ring.
Good afternoon, Governor Kemp's office.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
I'm great. My name is Stacey Chavis, and I am a coalition member with Georgia STOMP, and I would like for the governor to support the legislation. What was the bill, Adele?
House Bill 810.
House Bill 810. How does the governor feel about House Bill 810?
Okay, great. You know, I can take that information down. Stacey, let me write that down.
We also have a website too, if you want to go get more information. And I'm
Okay.
glad to email you any information that's needed.
Okay, perfect.
And one last question, who is the governor's floor leader?
His name is Brian, and he's actually in a meeting right now, but I can pass this message along to him, as well as the information on the website. Would you like his email address so you can follow up that way?
Sure. Let me write that down. Go ahead.
Okay, it is Brian, BRIAN .Johnson at georgia.house.gov.
Thank you so much. I will also make sure that I email him and follow up. This issue is so important for our elementary, middle, and high school girls. And you know that it is so important to make sure that we keep our students in schools and we keep them on the education track. You know, we are going to need a great workforce to work at all these companies that Governor Kemp is doing a great job of bringing to Georgia. And so we want to make sure that our students are ready. So we want to give them all the tools and the skills that they need now to be successful, whether they're in school or whether they are virtual. So thank you so much for your time. We thank you for your service, and I hope that you have a great day.
You know what? Thank you, Stacey, and I really appreciate you bringing this to our attention. We didn't know a lot about this topic. Let me tell you something. I think Brian actually has a clearing in his schedule today at 2. So if you want to just call back at 2, and I'll see if I can actually get you on the phone with him.
Oh, that would be perfect. Thank you so much. Yes,
you're welcome.
Make sure we can make that happen. Thank you so much. And you have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Yay! Awesome. Okay, thanks for hanging with us, guys, while we do a new role play. I've never seen that done on an advocacy training, but I think it was awesome.
So one of the things that I want to say that Dr. Glover said, and I tried to underscore, y'all be nice to the staff. I'm trying to tell you, when you are nice to the staff, things will happen for you. I remember when I ran a regional organization, all of the executive assistants were my best friends and trying to get to the CEOs and presidents, and they are the gatekeepers. They you know, put things on the schedule, remove things from the schedule, accidentally delete your information. So being nice and kind to the staff is so important. So thank you, Dr. Glover, for underscoring that point.
Yes, absolutely.
That was so awesome. And I already see some folks in the chat talking about what they picked up on, like how you were being so complimentary, Stacey, or Dr. Glover, how, you know, you were able to provide the email of somebody else who might be in the office who would be the most important person to deliver this message to. So all around, so many great key takeaways. We'd love to close with the next 5 minutes with time for questions and answers. So if folks would like to toss questions, if you have them into the chat, we are here to be a resource and answer any questions that you might have with your last 5 minutes of your lunch and learn. But if you can't stay, thank you so much for being here today. Claire, I'll hand it off to you, but we're just so grateful
let's
to see
watch
this
for
great
questions.
attendance.
Would really hope that they'll have some. Feel free to email us and follow up after this. A couple of things that are top of my mind is one, exactly what y'all were just talking about, administrative assistants. One of the administrative assistants in Atlanta has been a key voice for us with one of the legislators because she personally experienced or had experience with these issues. So that was a huge game changer for us. So that's true. I do see a hand up. Go ahead and just unmute yourself if you've got a question.
Hi, this is Adeyella Bennett, and I'm the CEO of an organization started by my 12-year-old twin daughters, Brianna and Brooke. The organization is in Montgomery, Alabama, and it's called Women in Training. And they're working for menstrual equity and to end period poverty. We have House Bill 50 here in Alabama. This is our 3rd year having it being sponsored, and we're hoping the 3 years is the charm. But I heard someone mention earlier about DOE funding for menstrual products in schools. How can I learn more about that?
Please just reach out to us and we can talk to you. We actually interact with people in other states all the time about different paths of how to get things done. I'll throw my email into the chat and we can talk about that. But basically, early on, we were able to convince state legislators of the issue of period poverty, and they put money in the budget. They didn't want to eliminate the sales tax, but they were willing to put money in the budget. And from there, that led to really great relationships of working with Department of Education, with school nurses throughout Georgia. And it's been one of the greatest ways, or, most rewarding ways that Georgia STOMP has worked over the last 3 years to know the difference we're making in the lives of students. So reach out to me, please. And we'll talk more about that. Thank you for being here.
I have also popped my email in the chat box. So if anyone has follow-up comments or questions in general about some of the things I talked about today, or Posh Pack in general, feel free to just follow up with me.
And I will say that related to getting, there's a lot of questions in the chat about who we reach out to. Right now, it's a good start with your state representative and state senator. They are probably going to tell you that it's not before the whole house, that it's, or they're not on that committee or whatever. It's still good to reach out to them. But in Tax-Free Tuesdays that we send every Tuesday, we'll have specific, easy things for you to do each week based on where it is in the legislature. Just by nature of being a part of this webinar or this training session today, you will be signed up, if you're not already, to get our tax-free newsletters. Of course, if you don't want it, you can unsubscribe to it, but we don't send emails often. And during the legislative session, that Tuesday email is the best way to keep up with what committee is it for, what's our current call, because we've got funding that goes through all of the appropriations subcommittees and then committees both in the House and then in the Senate. So it's a lot of changes from week to week. And then the HB 810 bill that goes through the Ways and Means Committee. And then we're going to be watching a couple of these other bills that have gotten dropped this year as well.
Claire, I want to quickly address the question, a comment from Catherine White, understanding the effectiveness of form emails versus personal.
Yeah.
Ms. White, I would encourage you to take the form email and personalize it. You can cut and paste the information, but I would personalize it, starting off with, I live in your district. I would like for you to do X, Y, and Z, vote yes, vote no, do this. I want to learn more about how you feel, where you stand on that issue. But I would take that form letter and then I would shorten it or lengthen it based on what you need. But I would personalize it as much as you could in leading with, I live in your district.
Yeah, that's a real balance for advocates of getting volume in there versus knowing that the ones that are personalized make the greatest difference. So we may prepare emails that are form emails, but we always ask, please personalize it as much as you can. Great news, Stacey. Great info. Anything else? Does anybody else see any questions in the chat? Otherwise, we're at our 1 o'clock point. Thank y'all for joining us today. Thank you to Dr. Glover and to Stacey Chavis for leading us. We are here. Reach out to us if you've got any questions going forward. If you're with an organization and you've got info that you think will help with our advocacy efforts, please stay connected and send it to us. Use the handouts that we've given and ask for more if we don't have what you need. So take care and thank you for joining us.